What's up, YouTube? Today I'm going to do a short video on monitoring the situation. So what do I mean by monitoring the situation? This video is partially in response to a good question I got in a comment on my recent Chudjack meme video. So one of you wrote, the video and the analysis are interesting, so about this previous video, but I don't understand where it is trying to go or why it even exists. So, first off, thank you for your feedback, and I think that these are very good questions generally that we could ask in real life. Like, what are you even trying to do, and why? In fact, there's some fun linguistic intrigue here. The English word why, I don't think you could really break down more. But like in the Spanish, for the word why, you'll say por qué, which literally might translate to something like for what. The Chinese translation also too, wei shima is similar. It's like wei is like for what purpose, and shema is what. So even in certain languages, we see this question when we ask why. You're asking what is this even for? What telos or objective or goal? What are you even going for? So, in brief, to answer that question, in making the analysis of something like the Chudjack meme or whatever kind of cultural analysis one might do, like in the future, I might be doing some book reviews or discussions of perhaps some more complex or larger things than just internet memes. But the basic idea of doing the analysis is the same. It's making sense of signals that come to you. So, if we talk about a more primitive situation than somebody on a computer, for example, we talk about a hunter that's going on a hunt, or even like a captain that's navigating a ship, then to understand what it means to look at the situation becomes much more concrete and easy to understand. Like a hunter is looking for signs of animals or things that might give away what the thing he's looking for are. Similarly, a captain on a ship, maybe he's watching some weather events to see if he'll have to make some special preparations to navigate a particular area, or so on and so forth. So with computers, it gets a bit more difficult and abstract. In my last video, like when I was doing a trading video, one could see how watching the news or keeping up with social media, that sort of stuff, it becomes useful in a practical way for reading what they would call like market sentiment or something. In any case, in our complex internet digital age, a lot of the signals or the things that we get come in the form of trends, images, memes, whatever you want to call them, on social media websites. So not only do I think it's practical for doing stuff like trading a stock portfolio, but I think that a lot of the stuff that we see on the internet is also just more broadly, it's like a language of our times. Back in the day, people might have got other cool stuff like, big old epic scrolls and illuminated manuscripts and hieroglyphics or whatever. We're in the age of the internet. So whether we like it or not, we got like funny yellow dog, Pepe. We got these signs and symbols to study and to understand the signals. So just like in a natural language, for instance, English, I don't get angry about I hate the word monitoring, or oh, this word situation, it's really great. I mean, to an extent, of course, each of us has the ability to choose which words that we use, and we should strive to have clear, good diction to choose our words wisely and for good purposes. Language isn't just an individual thing. Language is the the property of, you could say, the speaker community, the people that use it. Um, so regardless of whether or not you like the particular blips and bleeps that are coming out of the human interactions, it's your choice whether or not you're going to choose to try and make an effort to understand them or not. Like, the bips and the bleeps are going to be happening anyways. People, different parties, invisible entities, who knows? All sorts of different parties are going to be making noises and trying to say things, and it's your choice whether or not you want to try to make sense of them and understand them. So, the title of today's video is Monitoring the Situation. So this phrase, monitoring the situation, it became a bit of a meme phrase in of itself. So I have a definition from this site, knowyourmeme.com. I don't necessarily recommend this site, but it's one of the first search results that come up on Google or Bing or whatever your major search engine. So I bring this up basically as I said, we're not judging a term, whether this term sucks or not. It's just, this is the language that people use. This is a phrase, a term that people use. So let's understand what it means from the sort of mainstream or promoted source. So what's monitoring the situation? Monitoring the situation, quote, is a catchphrase used to describe the act of watching a situation closely to stay up to date on it and track its current status. While the phrase has been used in memes throughout the 2010s, it was popularized as a meme in June 2025 on Twitter or X as people began posting memes about monitoring the situation in reference to closely and obsessively watching current events to stay up to date. So the increase in use is potentially due to the rising tensions surrounding the Israel-Iran conflict and fears over the start of World War III, etc., etc. But anyways, this monitoring the situation meme kind of, as this definition is saying, gained popularity as people would maybe kind of tongue-in-cheek, somewhat in a fun way, refer to them like being anxious or watching the news or whatever as a sort of more professional, dignified sounding activity. So here we have a meme. I think this is Jeff Bezos, and the caption of the image I'm showing on the screen is the masculine urge to monitor the situation, when he's looking all tough, monitoring the situation. So there's something I think about associated with this monitoring the situation. That's like, a general looking at the battlefield, looking at their troops, or a captain on a ship. One is not simply doing nothing, even if they're just picking up signals from the environment. The idea is that when one is monitoring the situations, potentially there's some big choices or important things to be done, decisions to be made, and so you want to make a properly informed situation. So, these images and stuff, fun, funny, etc., etc. But, hey, in a way, each person with their own choices, with their own lives, you yourself get to monitor the situation every day as you go about in your life and you make your choices. So let's talk about monitoring the situation in the sense of kind of looking for signals and seeing what's happening. And as I said with the meme I posted, Chudjack meme, I think one sort of signal, for example, that we could be watching for and analyzing is what's currently trending or popular or being posted on the internet. That is a type of cultural signal, whether we like it or not. Okay. So in my notes here, the next thing I've written is our senses allow us to understand what is going on around us. And then I just listed what are usually listed as the five senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch. I'm going to be focusing on the two senses that are most associated with internet use, memes, etc., in our current age. So that would be sight and hearing. So I'm just gonna go through both hearing and seeing, and this age where people read stuff. There are overlaps. Feel free to leave your comments or your own takes on these things below if you have any insight into these. But for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to talk about hearing and seeing and how these senses have their particular properties, and how memes or internet content, things like this, are often associated with these senses. So, right, a captain on a ship navigating a boat, a hunter in a field, different people, the actions that they'll take, the form that it takes of them monitoring the situation is going to appear different. For people on computers, looking at computer monitors on the internet, yes, often we're talking about looking at funny cartoons, using your sight, your vision, and your ears, hearing. Okay, so what is hearing done right? So how can hearing properly inform us? Had a few bullet points here, so I'll just read them. Information that helps us to correct course. For example, if we heed a warning, can be life-saving. So to hear a warning, someone says, fire, fire, and there actually is a fire, and then you respond appropriately, like that's a clear way in which you could hear some useful information and then respond to it. Next, information that encourages or urges us to continue in doing what is good, or they should say, or helpful. Good. Let me correct that. Or helpful. So oftentimes, like your day's going slow, but then somebody urges you saying, "Hey, keep it up. We're almost done. You're doing a good job." Or yeah, pay attention. We're almost done. Or hey, that's looking good so far. Just correct and do this little thing. Words like this could make or break a person's efforts, a person's work within a day. So if we're listening and these sorts of messages come up and we choose to be attentive to that sort of message, then oftentimes hearing that rather than not hearing it at all could be a very useful thing, where the external environment gives us a signal that helps us to do what is useful. All right, and then the third bullet point I have here is information that can make sense of what at first may appear to be random or chaotic can help us. So this is the purpose of, like, for example, me doing this analysis of this Chudjack meme, this stuff. You might normally just see Chudjack or whatever and say, okay, whatever, what is this even about? You just scroll past it. It doesn't register to you. Or it's just silly funny. You don't think anything of it. Part of the purpose of academic research or analyses, movie reviews, I mean, people, in various forms, people love the sort of commentary or the secondary literature. Oftentimes, we aren't prepared in our situations to make sense of the quote unquote the primary literature. And so, videos like Alan Explains Chudjack or whatever, this could often be the bridge that turns what might normally be chaos or just noise into, now I could hear that signal. It's similar to, like, if you hear a foreign language, you don't know what the words are, then it's just noise to you. But, you you read a dictionary, you take the time to put in your attention and do your homework. If you do that, then suddenly what used to just be noise, this becomes something that is sensible to you. So in some ways, we could say that the analysis or the secondary literature, this is almost trying to teach it. It's like teaching us new languages, but those languages could be like visual things. Like, for example, another example besides internet memes is like movie tropes or director or filmmaker stuff. I don't really know much about that film stuff, but I understand, there's some valuable people that know a lot about these things. If I listen to them, then, at face value, I might see some scene in the movie. It'd be like, oh, yeah, I mean, like, this guy is just, like, I don't know, telling this other person that, his business sucks or whatever. But somebody who's into film might look at that same scene and point to how the directors are using all sorts of visual or graphical or spatial things to say much, much more beyond what I'm getting in just my surface reading. So, hearing like analyses or secondary commentary could be very, very useful in making sense of what normally wouldn't be a sensible signal to us. And I'll just make a general note here that a lot of the times, if something is boring to us or makes us fall asleep, it's for one of two reasons. Either we don't know anything that's going on at all, like listening to a completely foreign language, you don't understand what's happening at all. It's going to get really boring really fast. On the other hand, if someone is just saying way too much all at once, it's kind of overwhelming. You won't be able to process it. So you could get bored on kind of at one of these two things. Like you can't just read a math textbook cover to cover. It's like too much information, too much stuff at once. You're seeing too many patterns. It's overwhelming. It's not going to work. Or too much things you don't know. That's like no information. So I think that people, they kind of have a sweet range where you're hearing some new things, but a lot of familiar things. And then this is helping us to properly pay attention and hear stuff. So hearing, senses, analyses, etc., this is one way in which we could sort of broaden our knowledge range and thus be able to pick up on some more different signals. All right. So those are all ways that I just listed of how hearing could properly inform us. Hearing could be very useful in allowing us to detect meaning or see things that previously we were not able to make any sense of. However, we could also be deceived in hearing. So here are some ways in which that could happen. So I wrote, we are listening to a source that is either relaying incorrect information, directly misleading us, or saying things that may be correct, but which distract or draw away attention from what is more important. So obviously, the whole fake news, disinformation, if someone just straight up lies to you, then oftentimes if you are trying to say like, oh yeah, XYZ news network is reliable, and then you just listen to and gobble up their stories and repeat their stories, then you it's the saying that it's better to be uninformed than misinformed. So you're actually getting added confusion or negative knowledge. So hearing is actually like scrambling your brain and messing you up instead of helping you out. So that's also related to here, this point that you might listen to something that's deliberately misleading you. A lot of the times, flattery might be this way. So a person that surrounds themselves with flatterers or yes men, whatever you want to call this sort of person, they might tell you or say things to you that you might want to hear, but they're doing it, for example, for their own advantage, not to actually give you useful information or to help you in accomplishing your objectives. And then finally, under this same bullet point, I wrote, yes, things that may be correct, but which distract or draw away your attention from what is more important. So like you could go on the interwebs, and if you're just watching videos and like cooking all day when like say you're supposed to be like fasting or not even eating at all, then it's like these might be great videos teaching you how to do like cook Chinese food or something. However, if this isn't the information that you need to hear right now, or it's not helping you to do what you're trying to do at the moment, then such information could actually work to deceive you, and that you're watching Chinese cooking videos while someone's trying to reach you for something more important, or you're supposed to be writing a report, but instead of doing that, you're slacking off or doing something else. So I don't have to tell you a gajillion ways in which information, entertainment could be distracting, but that's the idea, that if we, through hearing, we fill up our ambient environment with all these other signals, and then listening to those signals, that prevents us from listening to the more important signals that we could be listening to. Okay, and then finally, for this hearing point, I added this one, which is, it's possible we could be deceived in hearing by only hearing what we have already decided is the signal. So in interpersonal relationship type stuff, you'll see this a lot. Like somebody decides that, this is that, let's say, Sally is a bad person. So, no matter what Sally says, John could interpret what she's saying in a way that he's already made up in his head. So, Sally says, I went to the grocery store. And then John hears, oh, yeah, she went to the grocery store because she's, avoiding what I asked her to do or whatever. So this, I would say, it's like, it's not a problem with your sense of hearing or your like a signal having noise. It's kind of like the person themselves in practicing self-deception. They become the source of their inability to hear. And so it's just like if somebody is really ideologically cooked, they might watch the video that you sent them, read the book you suggested to them, etc., listen to you slowly, go over, explain point by point all sorts of things. All of that is just noise, or doesn't matter if they already got some internal thing going on, such that they only hear their own self-deception. Okay, so I just went over some ways in which we could, first I said, correctly hear. Hearing could properly inform us, and then secondly, in which we could be deceived by hearing. So if you are a person that's trying to do a right thing, of course you want to hear correctly, to have your hearing be something useful. And when you're monitoring the situation, you're listening for different things, you want this to be a useful activity. So what does that look like? I wrote here, to monitor the situation properly, we practice vigilance and sobriety. So just a couple more things I wrote. We're listening for signals and seeking to interpret them correctly, even if they deliver a difficult message. In warfare, a good commander wants to be properly informed to make as best decisions as possible, even if they must hear bad news. So this is like the opposite of flattery. If you're looking to be properly informed through your hearing, you don't kill the messenger for saying something you don't like. Instead, you're just trying to get the best information that you can to improve your situation however you can. All right. And then just one note about the internet. I wrote, while lots of internet stuff is visual, it can be compared to hearing in the sense that we passively pick up signals from our environment, as opposed to visually fixing our attention on a particular thing. We hear many things around us, and then we try to make sense of this. And in a bit, I'll contrast that with seeing. So here, I'm talking about like reading stuff on the internet, um, seeing things pop up as a kind of hearing. This is because I'm talking about hearing in this sort of I don't know if you want to call it like symbolic or this broad sense of with your eyes you got to focus on something particular, but with your ears you're sort of picking up these signals from your environment, whether or not you're seeking them out yourself. So when I'm talking about hearing specifically here, and also quote unquote hearing on the internet, I mean, hearing on the internet could involve seeing some text written. What's important is that there's a kind of sort of place or stream where a lot of things come to you that isn't arranged in like a fixed static order. So like in a book or something, the book is closed in the sense that it's not being updated again and again and again as you're flipping the pages. Whereas when we're talking about hearing, it's kind of like all these different things in the environment might emit noises or make some sound. So that's kind of what I mean by there. All right. So there we did a brief treatment of hearing and deception and stuff like that on the interwebs. Let's take a look at seeing. So I wrote here, whereas hearing often involves monitoring the situation and gathering signals, information, so ambient around you. Seeing often involves choosing to focus our attention, usually via sight, but it could be like, watching a video and listening to the audio closely. That's more like seeing on something we deem to be useful. So seeing contrasted with hearing rather than just gathering things from our environment. When we're seeing, we're making a more conscious effort to focus our attention on something. In reading a book, we listen with our eyes by focusing our attention on a stream of words information we deem to be useful in some way. Seeing can properly inform us by giving us simultaneous or quick access to needed information we could quickly act upon. So, some examples of that: you have multiple books or tabs open at once when writing a book. Sight gives us the ability to quickly jump between things in a way that if we're having to listen to like an audio stream, we can't do it in the same way. Another example I had is talking about a video you're reviewing with friends or colleagues. It doesn't have to be a video, it could be real life, like you're watching a sports match or, a fight breaks out at Waffle House, whatever it is, and you're watching it with some people. You could all share and focus your attention on the same thing. This is a property of the visual signal. And I wrote, enjoying a sunset and thanking our creator for beautiful moments. So, of course, it's also quite an experience if you're able to enjoy nice visual things together. And I'll add that as a note to this one. When people talk about an action, for example, going to church, among other things, what is it that you're doing when you're going to church? In an Orthodox church, often what happens is you have a bunch of people that are standing up, facing the same direction, focusing their attention on what the priest is doing at the altar, for example. So rather than look at all the other things like the football game, the internet memes, whatever you're talking about, people are choosing to focus their visual attention as well as with their hearing attention. I mean, people aren't supposed to be talking and stuff. So to focus their senses on a particular thing. So when one goes to church, you're choosing not to monitor the situation visually through your hearing, etc., because you're choosing to be in a particular place at a particular time, looking at a particular thing, and not, scanning the world and scanning the news for all sorts of things that are going on. In any case, so how could seeing properly inform us? When one goes to church, for example, you're trusting that what you're doing when you're going to church, that observing this ritual, whatever you want to call it, that you're doing, that doing that is the choice of information access that you're doing at that moment, and you believe that there's value in that, as opposed to all the other, fun and flashy things outside in the world that you might be focusing your attention on instead. Okay, so what other things might you be focusing your attention on? So here, next subpoint I have written is how we could be deceived in seeing. And I brought up, for all you weebs, anime fans out there, this word that got popular in the anime Naruto, which is genjutsu, or illusions. And here is the definition I've had from the Naruto fandom page. It says genjutsu, literally meaning illusory techniques, is one of the main jutsu or technique. So in this series, this anime, you have all these characters that fight each other and they use these various techniques. So this genjutsu I'm talking about, this is just one type of move that people use when they fight, for those that aren't familiar with what I'm talking about. Okay, so it's one of the main jutsu or technique categories, which makes use of chakra. And chakra is kind of like their energy or power that they use. So unlike ninjutsu, so another type of technique, the effects of the genjutsu are not real, being only sensory illusions experienced by those who fall victim to it. And I don't think we need to read, oh no, the rest of the definition actually it's got one interesting bit. So according to the second Mizukage, genjutsu falls under the broad category of yin release. I just, this one word, the yin, came to my attention. It's associated here. Now we're getting into an Asian aside, but like yin and yang, the circle thing with the black and white. So the yin is often, that would be the kind of the female or the dark component. So here we're talking about genjutsu as a sort of illusory arts, is a kind of like, for lack of a better term, like the female deception, as opposed to like a yang or yang release would be more like directed focus, sun energy versus moon energy. Okay, enough of Asian aside hour. Let's return to the topic. Okay, so I bring up this term genjutsu because a lot of people are familiar with this this anime series. But the term, I think, generally is helpful because when we're talking about how deception and stuff works, we're talking about warfare and how, like, the images, the things we hear, the things we see, these are not just all for our benefit, all to help us. There's various parties and things around us that are actually, given the choice, they would do harm to you. And this is not conspiratorial thinking. Like, let me just put it this way. There's tons of companies who would gladly, say, if we could relieve you of, all your money, we would happily do it. Like a car dealership that's trying to sell you a car, they're like, we will happily take, your dollars and give you a car, right? And they want to do it at a profit. So they want to take as much money as they can from you and give you, a suitable amount of car back. But ultimately, if they're like a for profit company, they're about, taking away your dollars for themselves. That's just what companies do. So going off that, I mean, you could see how like advertisements, TV, news networks, etc., etc. I mean, a lot of what they're doing is they're using images, or illusions. They're using genjutsu on you to make you do actions that might actually be harmful to you. Big old pharma company, they push all these ads. I think like pharma ads are some of the most, they are the most widespread ads on the major television, boomer news networks, et cetera, et cetera. So why do they, flash these images at you? Why do they show you these things? Why do they say these things? Um, it's all about manipulating desire, changing your feelings, etc., etc. Another video we could talk about Edward Bernays and um, communication and all these other things. The idea, though, is a lot of the presentation of images and sounds that we're getting, they're done by parties that are neutral and or hostile to us, trying to present these things for us to affect or change their actions. Normally, I wouldn't buy XYZ, but because I saw these images, then now I'm convinced I want to do XYZ. That if I had moments of quiet or were in my reflection, maybe normally I wouldn't even consider that. But because you cast your genjutsu, you flash all these images at me, then whoa, lo and behold, like I really want a what's that seasonal Starbucks drink called? Spice chai spice latte, whatever it is. You see the advertisement, you see the signal, suddenly what idea normally you wouldn't have because you heard and saw things, your attention focuses. Now you have new desires that you act upon. Okay. So actually that previous example I gave with like advertising. So the advertisements oftentimes it's like radio ads. It's more about hearing. So being in a place you weren't going there in order to listen to ads, but in that space it's like a PvP battle arena where people are allowed to broadcast whatever they want. So, on the interwebs where there's ads that are allowed, this is saying in this space, companies who want to take your money, take your attention, they're allowed to broadcast their messages. So you step into a place like a supermarket, kind of whether you consent or not. I mean, you're stepping into like a kind of attention battle zone where there's likely going to be these signals of these advertisements, which often involve illusions, whatever. Okay, so going back though with the sort of distinction I made between sight and hearing, oftentimes with seeing, we're choosing to fix our attention on something in particular, as opposed to with hearing, where it might be more ambient in the environment. So, in terms of seeing, let's see. Right, people often choose to see in the focus your attention sense. We choose to see and focus on genjutsu, or illusion, basically. So here on the screen, I have pulled up this image of Pepe the Frog getting a nice whiff of copium. And here, this term copium, it's a play on words of opium, which is, of course, an addictive drug that was used on the Chinese people by the British, and also this term cope. So this term, maybe in another video we'll talk more about it, but the term cope is used to describe where you have some problem or your difficulty or some difficulty, so you come up with some actions in order to address that behavior. Now, people being mean on the internet will often, make fun of people and say like, oh, you're coping, to say that, I mean, I guess in a way, you aren't addressing the real underlying source of your problem. Instead, you're kind of flailing around your arms and, trying to do things to make you feel better in the moment, but you aren't actually getting at the issue. In any case, so this term here on this Pepe meme, copium, it's like cope and opium, which is this idea that it's a kind of artificial pleasure or artificial substance, whatever you want to call it, mental thing that people will use in order to make themselves feel better. So here I just wrote like this little line. Copium is kind of enjoying false narratives because they give like a kind of hope, even if that hope is false. So in terms of the internet and attention, For example, the form copium might take is if instead you take a step back from monitoring the situation instead of listening for whatever those real important signals for you to hear are, you take a step back from that. You choose not to monitor the situation, but instead you just go to what is like what feels good. You choose feels over reals. You huff the copium. That might be something, for example, like watching reruns of an old show because it makes you feel warm and fuzzy. So, by the way, I'm not saying like all copium is bad. You should never cope. You should never rest or whatever. That's just to say, though, that it is a kind of way of casting a spell on yourself temporarily. So it's like, or like another example that people like to diss on a lot is like video games. So if someone's like, "Oh, my life is boring," everything sucks, nothing ever happens, then oftentimes people might turn to something like video games because at least in this simulation, this illusion engine, then they have a space where they're able to exercise agency, at least like within this sort of simulated environment. So it's false. You know that it actually isn't changing your situation for giving you like more agency or action or whatever it is that you're looking for in your life. But it could sort of artificially at least alter your feelings. So, and whether it's like I was giving some examples of like old TV reruns or video games, or the prawn, something else, right? People, in some capacity, they're sort of deliberately casting illusions or genjutsu in front of themselves in order to, at least temporarily offer some kind of deception to themselves. All right, some more lines I wrote. So this one's talking about the copium here. Broadly speaking, drugs are often used as a kind of pleasure illusion to distract us from or block out reality. TV, movies, etc. can serve similar purposes. When we submit to indulging in pleasure for pleasure's sake, we block off our eyes from receiving other signals. So it's just like you're watching a movie, you're looking at your screen, then you're not looking and dealing with the boring, difficult people around you. Instead, you're looking at the interesting, funny TV people. All right. The deception in seeing is when our attention begins to focus on false things, which oftentimes we're choosing pleasurable false things, to the detriment of paying attention to potentially useful signals from the environment, focusing on what we have set out to do. For example, completing some job, blah, blah, blah. So fancy way to say like, we watch TV to distract ourselves from the boring homework that we're supposed to do, basically. And then the opposite of this is self-control. So self-control involves properly directing one's attention. So often this is through our sight. So choosing to, let's make one Asian joke. So, Confucius say, Facebook, not go on Facebook, right? So you're choosing with your eyes to face the book. Oop, I'm going to lose my page there. Instead of doing what is attention scattering, you're choosing to focus your attention and do what is attention focusing. All right. So this video is getting a bit long, so let's wrap up. So, monitoring the situation. Why would you monitor the situation? Why would you analyze memes? What is the point of all this? In short, in the internet age, these are all ways in which we could seek to follow the way. So what is meant by following the way? Monitoring the situation is essential for action because we can only do what we are positioned to do. Anyone could try very hard to force specific results. For example, one thing I've done, trying to focus or study many foreign languages for many years. But if the situation is not right, then these efforts may be vain or fruitless. So why would you pay attention to your situation? I mean, paying attention to the situation is essential if you want to properly navigate the situation. See, on the other hand, when we monitor the situation, listening for what is good and proper for us to do, then we could find paths to success. In Christian lingo, we might call this seeking God's will. For example, there's the line in the Lord's Prayer, which is, "Thy will be done." So if we are not monitoring the situation, so we're not looking to sort of find the right way or the right path, then how is it that we are able to know what we should do? So, sometimes, I don't know, lightning from the sky, there might be events that help us get right on track in a way, but most of the days, most of the time, it's our job to look for what that way and what that path is, as opposed for like passively hoping some anomalous event will come. I mean, you could ask for such events if you want, but most of the days, most of the time, it's your job to sort of look around and try to figure out what it is to do. That's part of what it means to be a person with free will. All right. And then, okay, I had a couple more lines on this about prayer and signals, but I think as this video is getting a bit long, I'll save those for another day, for another time. But I hope in this video, albeit in a very direct way, I was able to answer this question of why is it that one might study or analyze something like the Chudjak meme, and through discussing what it means to monitor the situation, how it is that we're in this sort of information sea that we swim through, this global marketplace, this global village, whatever you want to call it, that we're in, whether we like it or not, the language that is around us, the sort of signals that are around us are often in the forms of funny internet images. And so, if we're able to talk about these to sort of create a helpful secondary or interpretive literature, if we're able to analyze these things together, then hopefully we could all do a better job at not only navigating our own situations better together, but when we have more eyes and ears, more different perspectives, oftentimes this could help compensate for our own blind spots, or you're over here so you could hear things that are over there that I can't hear. The idea is, if we have many people that are good at monitoring the situation, then by talking to one another, forming good networks, reliable groups of friends, and so on, that potentially we could help each other and enjoy each other's company, doing what would be impossible for each of us as individuals to just do by ourselves. So with that, I think I will wrap up this video. Like, subscribe, do all the rest. And please leave comments, suggestions, etc., etc. If there's other sorts of videos you'd like to see content on, and I thank you all for joining.